An embassy. President Carter says the 21 million people will be affected if Congress cuts off the food stamp money. $100,000 is missing from a jewelry store in New York. Police are investigating.
A fire in northeast Michigan today killed one firefighter and destroyed more than 1,000 acres of forest. Ironically, the fire was deliberately set by the U.S. Forest Service in an effort to destroy unwanted vegetation. When high winds caused the fire to burn out of control, authorities ordered an evacuation, but an undetermined number of houses were destroyed. The flames are threatening to wipe out the nesting grounds of a tiny songbird called the Kirtland's warbler, which is on the endangered species list. At last report, the fire was still burning, but officials expect the wind to shift, making it easier to control. Dave?
Lois, in a related development, it's called the River of No Return. It's more than 2 million acres of pristine land in Idaho. With a look at the nation's newest wilderness area, here's Bob Lloyd. Congress recently set aside the land for that wilderness area. Lois?
Bacteria causing Legionnaire's disease have been found in water samples in San Francisco. The samples were taken from an air conditioning unit in a building where 5 workers contracted the disease. Officials say all of the victims have recovered and the air conditioning unit has been disinfected.
Well, the common chicken may someday provide medical researchers with information to save your life. Ellen Bryan reports on how chicken embryos are now giving researchers valuable medical insights.
How to grow chick embryos outside the shell. Now a 29-year-old medical student, Dunn said he spent long hours doing research in home basements while 4 Harvard cancer specialists were tackling the same problem. But Dunn's perseverance has paid off. He's devised a method to grow chick embryos without the shell. That allows Dr. Timothy Fitzharris of the Medical University of South Carolina and now other researchers across the nation to easily study problems such as heart defects, skeletal deformities, and growth of cancerous tumors. For years, scientists have used chick embryos like this one, whose tiny heart can be seen beating, to study the development of organs, tissues, and internal systems, and the only good method was to put a small window in the eggshell. Has just received a $150,000 grant and is using Dunn's method to study the way defects develop in the minuscule heart of the chick embryo. Defects in the chick heart are believed to develop in much the same way defects develop in human hearts. Dunn makes the process sound simple. Each of his chick embryos grows in a sack of clear plastic wrap suspended inside a 3-legged ring fashioned from a lightweight drain pipe.
It was necessary to come up with a particular kind of plastic wrap that would allow gas to go through, allow water to go through it. It also was necessary to come up with a proper chamber size. The diameter of the chamber is critical. As one can see from this chamber, it is not egg-shaped. And one would think that you might need an egg-shaped chamber, but in fact it turns out that chambers that are not egg-shaped really give you better results than those that are.
Dunn says he just wanted to provide an easy way to observe the developing embryo, a valuable asset for researchers struggling to learn how birth defects develop or how cancerous tumors grow in developing systems. Ellen Bryan reporting from Charleston, South Carolina.
And still to come tonight, why Senator Kennedy calls the president's economic policies 2020 and how baseball could help simplify things in Washington, D.C.
headlines at this hour, the U.S. Naval Academy has a virtually all-white faculty, but with a minority enrollment of 12%. We'll have more on that story coming up in our newscast. After this newscast, stay tuned for Crosstalk. That's our call-in show. Then an hour later, we'll have our Sports Spotlight.
And more on topping our news at this very hour. President Carter's economic policies came under more attack today from Senator Edward Kennedy. The Democratic challenger called the Carter economic policies, in his words, 2020. 20% inflation, Kennedy said, and 20% interest rates. Kennedy was campaigning at a Ford Motor Company plant in Mahwah, New Jersey, where some 5,000 workers will be laid off there next month. In Washington, the senator's political director was also on the attack. Paul Kirk claims the Democratic National Chairman is biased in favor of President Carter and should resign. He accuses John White, hired a top Carter campaign official, to head the fall campaign. New York Governor, meanwhile, Hugh Carey, thinks he has an idea to stop all the Kennedy-Carter feuding. He says he wants both men to release all their delegates at the convention. The Democratic governor says that a lot of the delegates elected in recent primaries may have changed their minds.
Of course, the Republican and Democrat parties are at opposite ends over their philosophies, and so, of course, are the presidential candidates. Of course, Ronald Reagan, the Republican, and Democrat Jerry Brown differ as much as any two people can, except on one thing, and that is that they both want to be president.
The two most recent governors of California, Ronald Reagan and Jerry Brown, don't agree on much of anything, except they both want to be president of the United States. They both ran in 1976. Neither one won his party's nomination. They both run in 1980. Governor Brown's dropped out. Governor Reagan is still in the race. Looks like he might be the Republican nominee. One thing they do agree upon is that a principal credential both of them have to be president of the United States is they both presided over the economy of the state of California. California is an immense place. It's a complex state. We all know that. But what they both said, in practically every platform appearance they've made this year, is that California, if we're an independent, autonomous nation, would be the 7th largest economy in the world. That's the kind of statistic you just can't let go by. You can't let it be ignored. If you got the time and the opportunity to look it up. I had both. I did, and here's the report. The largest economy in the world, understandably, you guessed it, the United States of America. Most recent year, gross national product, $2,088 billion. In second place, in a distant second, the Soviet Union. Third place, the West Germans. Fourth, the Japanese. Fifth, the French. Sixth, China, $340 billion a year. Breathing right down China's neck. In 7th place, the state of California. An annual economic product of $298.5 billion. That's remarkable. California, all its nuts and fruits and all the needles that it takes from every monologist and a monologue in the world. California, in 7th place in the world. I think it's absolutely terrific. I don't know what it means about the credentials, legitimacy, Ronald Reagan or Jerry Brown to be president of the United States. But it tells us something about the United States. From the class reunion in Washington, I'm Mark Shields for Cable News.
The largest penalty ever assessed against an industrial polluter was reduced today. In 1976, the Allied Corporation was fined more than $13 million for polluting the James River with a pesticide called Kepone. Today, a federal judge reduced by $15,000 the penalties against two of the defendants, who are officials of the Life Science Products Company. Life Science is a firm that manufactures the pesticide for Allied Chemical Corporation. That's Walter Matthau.
Are we on? What's that? Oh, I thought, all right. The United States and Canada have launched a joint study aimed at finding out how water pollution affects sea life. Scientists speculate oil spills and chemicals may cause hundreds of sea animals to wash up on shore every year. In addition, researchers want to know if oil spills affect the sonar of whales and dolphins. Already, it has been determined that high levels of toxic chemicals cause sterility in seals. The new study will cost $1 million.
Now, with a look at our weather, is our $1 million weatherman, Flip, and I guess the ocean does affect our weather, too.
So, Weather around the nation today started out very calm, but before the sun set, thunderstorms were occurring in much of the nation. A spring heat wave moved east from the plains today into the southern Great Lakes and middle Atlantic coast states. Alpena, Michigan recorded an 81-degree reading by noon, breaking the old 80-degree mark for the date set back in 1960. The 81-degree mark at Atlantic City, New Jersey broke that city's 41-year-old record. And the Miss USA contest is being held in Biloxi, Mississippi. And girls and girl watchers alike are all wet tonight as thunder showers are popping along the Gulf Coast. Afternoon thunder showers dumped marble-sized hail on the Jacksonville, Florida area. And as the day cooled off, the very hot areas of the country were also plagued with thunderstorms. And the threat of thunderstorms will remain in the upper Mississippi Valley to Florida and the southern Atlantic coast. In the west, showers and thunderstorms spread over western Washington state, while a few showers linger in southern Arizona. A sidelight to that was in Yuma, Arizona today, 67-mile-an-hour winds recorded associated with a thunderstorm there. Now back to Dave and Lois.
Coming up on our next half hour, two toddlers play in death at a Texas airport, and our auto expert tells us how to make some money from old oil.